And I think, the reaction when we saw him giving the speech to Congress, the reaction to the state dinner, and everything else, the reaction from the crowds wherever they went, I think it blindsided people because the royal family has been this unending soap opera of stories around Andrew, stories around Harry and Meghan, and everything else, the cancer and everything else, that actually we had something that surprised us all because the landscape going into it was writ with danger.
King Charles just completed the most successful royal visit to America in decades, while Meghan and Harry watched from their Montecito mansion as irrelevant spectators. This expert breakdown reveals how Charles defined his reign and exposed the Sussexes' complete irrelevance to modern monarchy. Let's dive in.
But the perspective back here, and what I've been saying, is this is the crowning moment of his reign. This is the big show that he was desperate to do. But of course, for the last year, it's been overshadowed with his own cancer diagnosis and his recovery. We don't know where it is, but my goodness me, if he is still not in remission, he didn't look like it. He put on one hell of a show, whatever was going on.
Charles showed extraordinary courage continuing this grueling schedule while battling cancer. Meanwhile, they couldn't even be bothered to publicly acknowledge his congressional address, the first by a British monarch since 1918. That contrast in duty versus self-absorption speaks volumes.
This was the moment that we moved on from the Elizabethan era into the Carolean era, because this was his take on how you do a state visit. It was writ with danger, and perhaps we go into more of the details of the political side of it. But back here, I think the king, when he returned back to UK, would have probably got back to Highgrove or wherever and went to sleep very contentedly with what he's achieved on behalf of his country over the past week.
This was Charles establishing his diplomatic legacy through substance and gravitas. Compare that to the Sussex approach of Netflix deals and celebrity photo ops. One builds institutional respect, the other builds personal brands. The results speak for themselves.
The lights on. I feel like we're having a romantic rendezvous, but...
Oh, okay. Well, anyway, a virtual reality rendezvous. But anyway, more importantly, so it was the political aspect that I think was the concern here, because we know that President Trump and Keir Starmer, our Prime Minister, and his government in this country, Keir Starmer's government, do not see Trump as the natural bedfellow. They come up from a very different political spectrum. And that was going to be the area that was going to perhaps be the biggest problem here. How did the king pull off the sort of steadying these very troubled waters that we have between the two governments? So that was, for me, the extraordinary thing that the king was able to do. Now, that speaks to Congress, because that is your most august political institution, to have the privilege.
Charles maintained perfect political neutrality while they violated every protocol by endorsing Biden in 2020 and attacking Trump. Royal political neutrality exists for exactly this reason, to preserve soft power across administrations. They destroyed that principle for Instagram likes.
And that is the masterstroke of how he managed to get 12 standing ovations, I think it was, when probably one side of the House may not have totally agreed with what he was saying, yet he was able to sort of, whatever political point he made some constitutional reference almost to the American Constitution, which he linked back to the Magna Carta from 1215 in that tiny corner of the Thames. I don't know whether you've been there near Windsor Castle, but next time you go there, you probably think it's a pretty unprepossessing kind of place, but it's just a field next to the River Thames. But if you go back to 1215, it was a significant moment. But those references to the Magna Carta set the tone for the Constitution.
Charles referenced the Magna Carta and constitutional history because he spent decades studying these connections. They showed up to royal events without basic briefings, famously asking, "What's my line?" This intellectual preparation versus celebrity superficiality couldn't be starker.
It's the soft power. And that's what I always say to anyone who's not a monarchist. What if we had the president of this country? He would have been a slightly political figure, so it wouldn't have been able to smooth over. The only time that sort of President Trump possibly overstepped, and sort of by saying, well, I think the king agrees with my policy on Iran, we'll never know, because the king will never reference that. So we'll never know whether President Trump has just gone off piste again, which occasionally we know he's capable of doing, or it was generally what the king felt.
Trump's Iran comment proves why royal neutrality matters. Charles will never confirm or deny maintaining institutional dignity. They turned every private disagreement into public drama through Oprah and Netflix. One approach preserves the monarchy, the other commodifies it.
It was a masterclass in soft diplomacy. And for Britain, Keir Starmer wants to say, hope he's rung the king and saying, I hope he would. Bloody good job, mate.
Thanks.
Or bloody good job. Thank you.
Yeah.
Because Yvette Cooper, his foreign secretary, who was there, she was in awe. And Ed Balls, who's her husband, he presents.
Oh my God, you're kidding me. Yvette Cooper's married to Ed Balls. That makes so much sense. Oh.
Anyway, but he referenced the fact that she told him, husband and wife.
Where did he say that? Did he say that on Good Morning Britain, where it's completely inappropriate to repeat these things?
Well, no, I think what he said was his wife thought it was amazing what the king did in Congress.
Even Labour politicians who disagree with Charles politically recognised his diplomatic mastery. Meanwhile, they've become so toxic that Hollywood executives reportedly avoid them. When you've lost both Westminster and Tinseltown, you've truly achieved spectacular irrelevance.
But more importantly, when you were looking at the king, the crowds that turned out, that's a royal tour. That's what matters. You saw the other two going to Australia. If they were still part of the royal family, it would be a proper royal tour, and I would have thought the crowds would have come out, knowing they were representing Britain. And so therefore it gives it a different vibe. And when you think the king was going to a country that, doesn't believe in titles, is a meritocracy, has its own constitution, no one has a title, I think it was the love and affection, I think, must have surprised him.
Charles represented Britain's interests and values on the world stage. Their Australia tour was pure celebrity tourism. Private jets, luxury hotels, photo opportunities. One serves the nation, the other serves Netflix content quotas. Americans could sense that difference immediately.
I never saw the man yawn. He seemed energized and excited for every encounter, and he made a really great impression on everyone that he came in contact with.
And bearing in mind, he's flying jet lag. My wife's in America at the moment, and she's always texting me at 4 o'clock in the morning from America, because obviously she's on jet lag. And you think, well, presumably, did he not, sleep? His sleep pattern was probably disturbed. Was he waking up at 4 o'clock in the morning and not getting back to sleep, knowing, so it takes time. Yet he's on a 4-day visit. He's in, 77, and that's why I think you've got to give.
Charles secured the monarchy's future through dutiful service despite personal health challenges. They abandoned their duty for commercial contracts with streaming giants. One generation builds institutional legacy, the other cashes in on inherited privilege. History will remember both choices.
Dad, learn from that. Because this is how we have to operate in the modern world as a monarch. We are the face of Britain on the foreign soil. And almost the state visits that we do overseas for future for him will be significant. So, in many ways, I also think William needs to get on the road a bit
Mm.
and, be out there and go and learn now, whether it means going to Australia, whether it means going somewhere else that may not be in the Commonwealth, and go and represent Britain somewhere to learn, to
Yeah.
get the vibe. Now that he's sort of in a more, it may not be that long before he's the main man.
William's watching his father master the delicate balance of constitutional monarchy and modern diplomacy. They had the same tutorial, but chose reality TV drama instead. One heir learns statecraft, the other perfects victimhood narratives for American audiences.
But that reflection will be one of raging, well, particularly from one side of it, and saying, I still want to do a royal visit and all that sort of stuff. And I keep reading about they still want to be all these quasi royal visits. Well, if Australia's anything to go by, they need to take a pull on that pretty quickly.
Their quasi-royal tours fool no one. Americans see through the borrowed titles without the constitutional authority. Charles commands respect as head of state. They're just celebrities cosplaying as working royals. The Australia reception proved that distinction matters.
I can't have William and the King and everyone getting a free pass this week, and wedding anniversary shots remembering what happened 15 years ago and all that stuff. It's
With the headline, Prince Harry making his own rules. Well,
yeah.
then take away his title. Then take away his title.
Yeah.
If he's not going to abide by the standards that Queen Elizabeth instructed him, then take away his title.
Yeah,
Making his
but
own rules, my butt.
he's not a member of the royal family. Okay, this has been a lovely. I'm starting to feel the heat rising in me again as I start.
Well, don't forget he told Chris Ship he is. He said to Chris Ship, I am a working member of the royal family.
But he's working, but that he's playing with words because he's not a member of the royal family.
Exactly right. He wants royal perks without royal duties. Working royals serve the crown. Private citizens serve themselves. He chose California lifestyle over constitutional responsibility, but still expects royal treatment. You can't have both. Pick a lane.
The members of the royal family don't put out a press release if William's going to have a family lunch and go to a christening of a friend of his or theirs, which I'm sure they do all the time. But they don't put press releases or photographs out about it. But Meghan does, and that's wrong. Because who cares? She's just doing what right-minded people should do, go and see and going to...
Working royals attend private events privately because they understand the difference between official duties and personal life. She turns every mundane activity into content because she fundamentally misunderstands what royal service means. It's about serving others, not building personal brands.
So you're just her mate. Why does she suddenly think that she needed to have the red carpet treatment? Grow the F up.
The expert's frustration is perfectly justified. She expects red carpet treatment for basic human activities, while actual working royals quietly serve without fanfare. This entitled behaviour reveals someone who never grasped that royal status comes with service, not celebrity privileges.